Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer for Kentucky Derby Prep Recap. In this edition, we're going to take a look back at the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby, going a mile and an eighth at Oaklawn Park, the coming out party for Angel of Empire. We break from the gate. Angel of Empire is the number 6. He came from out of it in his prior start to win at the fairgrounds. I think he proved that race was no fluke here.
Yeah, he certainly did. Another good performance from this horse here, maybe even a better performance, Dan. When he won the prior race at the fairgrounds, he got a really good trip in that race. More of the same here with Flavian Pratt taking over. He gets a great trip in this race. He's just going to sort of set up shop mid-pack here. There's not going to be anybody near him for much of the running of this race. He's in the clear, just sort of finding a really nice spot, Dan. When it's time to go, he goes.
Two Eagles River set a pretty quick opening quarter. He's going to back it down, and the pace ended up being more moderate. He's on the lead right now. Reincarnate, a horse that has run some very nice races in his career, is up close to the pace, and he ends up being the only part of the pace that's still hanging around in the end. Do you give him any extra points?
No, of course not. He gets a great trip in this race. He's sitting right outside the horse who's cutting the pace in this race. And you know, it's a really good trip for Reincarnate, I think, Dan. I mean, the horse that's making this pace, he will get tired really late in here, but it's not like he gets beat a million lengths. And the horses that are also in the sort of that bunched up finish behind Angel of Empire for the leftovers, they're right behind Reincarnate right now. He gets no extra credit from me. He got a great trip in here. He works really hard around the second turn. He can't even gain ground on the horse that's on the lead. And that's the winner to his outside right now. He's already gotten by this horse before Reincarnate even makes the lead in this race. He gets no extra credit from me.
Pratt pushed the button on Angel of Empire just inside the 5/16, and you saw almost instant acceleration. He went by the field in about a blink of an eye, and now he has the field's measure. This is a really strong professional performance for a colt that seems to be getting good at the right time. This race came back pretty fast, a 94 Beyer speed figure, a career best. Yet another improvement for Angel of Empire, and he's a horse that still could be sort of lurking under the radar as it pertains to Kentucky Derby wagering.
Yeah, I think all those things are true. He didn't even really get that much respect in here, Dan, despite coming off of a win in the Grade 2 Risen Star. This is his second win now at a mile and an eighth, so you don't feel like distance is a problem for him. He's got a really nice running style in that he's off the pace, but he's never really outrun in any of his races. He's lost once so far on dirt in his career, and that race with the Smarty Jones, now 3 starts back, where he was totally compromised in a race that had no pace at all. I mean, this horse has made very few mistakes so far.
Beaten favorite in here, the 4th place finisher Rocket Can was coming off of a 2nd place effort in the Fountain of Youth behind Champion Forte. And to be honest, I think he ran his usual Rocket Can race. He had a pretty good trip. It looked like for a brief instant at the 5/16 he was going to run. Then Angel of Empire blew right by him.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that stuff. I mean, I thought he got a really good trip in this race. He was in range all the way. Angel of Empire just powered right past him around the final turn. And from there, I mean, I feel like you almost kind of have to separate this race when they come down to the finish. Angel of Empire is sort of in a league of his own. He's way better than these horses. And then the rest of them, it was just kind of a battle for the leftovers down to the wire. I think there were 5 of them sort of bunched up between 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th at the end of this thing. Rocket Can, came up short. He was easily outfinished for 2nd. He couldn't get 3rd.
Red Route 1 added blinkers for the first time, presumably to accomplish one or two things. 1, to get him a little bit closer to the pace. 2, to get him to focus perhaps a little bit better. He's sort of awkward with his lead changes. Well, he certainly didn't get closer to the pace. He fell far, far behind as usual. And a horse with that sort of running style, it's just very difficult to make up 10, 11 lengths on good horses.
Yeah, it's hard to make up that kind of ground on good horses, especially when you don't even finish that strongly, Dan. And I know that he's a deep closer, but to me, he hasn't really finished, super strong in any of his races. He makes up a little bit of ground late. He has a bad habit of not changing leads in the stretch. He has a really bad habit of trying to drift in as he's racing on through the stretch of his races too. All those things just sort of conspire against the horse with his running style. And he was, at the end of the day, he was never any kind of a factor in this race.
Let's talk a little bit about the longest shot on the board. That's King Russell, who was coming into this race off a maiden win, and he just seems to be improving also with a little bit extra distance. He ran just fine in this race. He certainly didn't threaten the winner. You could argue that he has upside potential, arguably more than the winner. He's going to have to tap into that if he is to threaten in the Kentucky Derby. Right now, he's sort of on the bubble as it pertains to points.
Yeah, I mean, he's just going to have to improve a lot when they get to the Derby if he makes it into the field and they decide to run there. I won't, take anything away from what he did in this race. It was a step in the right direction. I thought Bejarano gave this horse a great ride. Also, Dan, he just rated him from the start. He followed Flavien Prat around the track in here. He got right behind Angel of Empire early. He followed him around the second turn. He wasn't good enough to kick on with that horse through the stretch, but he did pretty well to be second.
Bourbon Bash and Two Eagles River, both 8-1. Two Eagles River ended up on the lead. He just tired. He was not as good as the other horses in this race. Bourbon Bash made a pretty solid mid-race move down towards the inside. Do you think that sort of took the starch out of him?
I don't think you can really give him too much of an excuse here, Dan. I actually thought they'd get way more aggressive with him at the start of the race and maybe try to make the lead. I guess that wasn't the plan. They didn't do that. They just sort of sat along the rail in here. I thought overall he worked himself into a pretty good position up the backstretch, but he was working hard from a long way out in here, and he didn't have any finish at all.
Let's take a closer look at Angel of Empire. He is a Pennsylvania bred, much like Smarty Jones, who won the Kentucky Derby in the Preakness way back when. He's by 2-year-old champion Classic Empire. His dam, a half-sister to a graded stakes-winning miler named Conquest Big E, a $32,000 buyback as a weanling. He sold for $70,000 to the Albaugh family stables. Brad Cox just having a tremendous year with his 3-year-olds, and this horse has really picked it up. I know all of his dirt races are good, but 1 1/8 has really moved him forward, and he seems to have that stamina that you need for the Derby, as well as a fair amount of tactical speed.
I like all those things about him too, Dan. I really like the way he finishes his races off. I'm with you on that stuff. And you sort of just know that you can tell when you start looking up his PPs. There's no bad dirt races. But you can tell that he's sort of one of the horses who's maybe not or wasn't prior to this race near the top of the Brad Cox list, a different rider for every single one of his starts. We'll see who lands on him come Derby Day, because he's earned a spot in that race.
Let's take a look at the prices for the Arkansas Derby. Angel of Empire wins it as the 4th choice in the race. He returns $11.40. The longest shot, King Russell, was second. Reincarnate, a pace-pressing third. Rocket Can, the favorite, tired to 4th. Angel of Empire, 2 major Kentucky Derby preps at 2 different tracks. Distance seems okay, and he might be a little bit of a long shot going into the Kentucky Derby.